Alright guys, we are back for part 2 of your 12C notes. Hope everyone's doing well. So let's keep going through what we had. So the next one is an error analysis. So it says, your friend was trying to solve the following equation using the quadratic formula. Identify and correct the errors in planning the solution. So it kind of gives you a spot in order for you to plug things in, right? Because they're trying to show you that something happened. So, right, looking at your equation. So we've got, here, I'm going to write it over here. So we have 10x squared plus 4x minus 1 equals 0. So this tells you A is 10, B is 4, C is negative 1. So x equals negative b. So b is a positive 4, so when you plug it in, we should have x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So when we compare that to their quadratic formula, right, look, they have b squared here and negative b here. So that's going to be the problem that we had on this one, right, is it should be the other way around, right? The negative b should be on the outside and the b squared should be on the inside. Right, so when we're talking about, right, it says identify incorrect. So now we've kind of identified the issue, right? So we've identified that they had their original quadratic formula incorrect. They had the negative b and the b squared in the opposite positions, right? So there's our error, but we have to correct it. So let's go ahead and write out what it should be, okay? So we should have x equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4, and then a is 10, c is negative 1, all over 2a, so 2 times 10, which is 20. Right, so this is our correction, right? This is what it should be. And then, okay, so then when we want to actually identify the error, right, identifying the error, we're just going to write kind of what we talked about. So we'd say their quadratic formula is incorrect. The negative b and b squared were switched. Right, so it's important to make sure that your original quadratic formula is correct in doing all this. Otherwise, there's no way you're going to get the right answer if your whole formula is wrong. Alright, so the next thing we're going to talk about is being able to tell how many solutions you're going to have and what kind of solutions that you are going to have. So the b squared minus 4ac, that's called the discriminant, right? So if we look at our quadratic formula, b squared minus 4ac, right, you see it in here, b squared minus 4ac. That's the part that's underneath the square root, okay? So that's part under the square root. Okay, so there's different things that can happen under there. So underneath that square root, if your answer ends up equaling 0, so you have 0 underneath there, that tells you that you're going to have one solution, right? Because if you end up with 0 underneath the square root, you're doing plus or minus the square root of 0, which is plus or minus 0, okay, right? Because if we look at this, we're going to be doing plus or minus the square root of 0, which is just plus or minus 0, and you can't do, which is just 0. You can't have plus 0 or minus 0. Everything's just 0. If it's greater than 0, right, that's positive. Okay, so that tells you you're going to have two solutions. Oh my gosh, flying all over the place. So this tells you, I'm going to have to do a little, there we go. You're going to have two solutions because you'll have plus or minus the square root of a positive number, which is going to be just plus or minus that number, which gives you the positive version and the negative version, right? But then if what's under the square root is less than 0, right, which means it's negative, then you're going to have two imaginary solutions. So I guess I should put two real solutions here, two imaginary solutions over here, okay? Right, because if it ends up being negative, you're going to be doing plus or minus the square root of a negative number, right, which remember is square root of -1 and then the square root of that number. And that gave us I, and then that gave us the plus or minus version of your number. So that gives you to where you have the positive number I and the negative number and I. So you have two imaginary solutions, right? So that's kind of the different options of what can happen underneath that square root. So we have, it says use the discriminant to determine the number of solutions. So all we're doing is trying to figure out how many solutions each one is going to have, okay? So we have 10x squared minus 3x minus 1, right? So we've got, here's our A, B, C. So we're just doing the b squared minus 4ac and seeing what it comes out to be. So b squared, I can't even see the problem. So b squared, so we're doing -3 squared minus 4 times a, which is 10, and c, which is -1. So -3 squared, that is 9. And then we're doing minus 4 times 10, which is 40, times -1, so minus -40. And remember, that's the same thing as doing 9 plus 40, right? When you have your double negative over here, right? Two negatives, those change to a positive. So we have 40, which is 49 when you do 9 plus 40. So this one's going to have two real solutions, right? Because 49 is a positive number, right? Next one, 5x squared minus 4x plus 1. So here is your A, here is your B, here is your C. So it is, again, b squared minus 4ac. So b squared, that's -4 squared minus 4. A is 5 and C is 1. So -4 squared is 16, and then 4 times 5 is 20, times 1 is still just 20. 16 minus 20 is -4. Right, so we would end up with a negative under the square root. So this one's going to have two imaginary solutions. Right, because we'd have a negative number underneath that square root. Right, and let's just do, I think we only have one more on here. One more. Okay. X squared minus 6x plus 9. So, right, we kind of have an invisible 1. So we're doing 4. Oh, I'm totally writing that wrong. Haha. B squared minus 4ac. So here's our A. Here's our B. Here's our C. So b squared, so -6 squared minus 4 times A times C. -6 squared is 36, and then minus 4 times 1 is 4, and then 4 times 9 is 36. So we're doing 36 minus 36, which is 0. So this means we would have one solution, because you can't have plus 0 and minus 0, right? There is no positive or negative 0. It's just 0. And that is everything for your second part of your 12C notes. So I hope everyone's having a good day. Reach out to me if you need it. Reiterating, I'm here for you. I know we're all getting bored. We're all tired of being stuck inside, but you can still go out, take a walk if you need to, get some fresh air, be outside. We're all going to get through this together. Love you guys. Bye.